NewsX has now accessed for the first time in history the Justice BN Kirpal Commission report. This report was commissioned by the Indian government to understand why Kanishka Flight AI-182 exploded mid-air on 23rd of June 1985. The report is 220 pages long. This is the first time that anyone has ever put out as much detail as we have the findings of this report for our viewers, not just in India but globally, to understand what happened. Every time I begin by explaining why is it that we're actually looking into the Kanishka bombings. You're wondering, right? Something that happened in 1985 for which the Canadian government, not under Justin Trudeau but under someone else, already apologized for it. They accepted the fact that their intelligence failed miserably, botched up the entire investigation. Why is it that we're discussing that now? The truth is that we never had access to what was it that our own commission report said. What's truly stunning is the fact that our commission report put together the facts merely a few months after the bombing. The bomb happened on 23rd June 1985. India put out its report in March 1986. The same findings took Canada 25 years. 25 years is enough time for the culprits, for the conspirators, for the terrorists to have gone scot-free, which is exactly what happened. I take now the next 25 minutes to go over the analysis and conclusions portion of this report. We'll put this out, our touchpads on the screen first. There you have it. This is the analysis and conclusions section of the Justice BN Kirpal report, which has been accessed for the first time and has been put out. A page-by-page analysis has been done by NewsX through the course of the day. I'm also being joined by Captain Sam Thomas, former civil aviation expert, with us on the broadcast. Captain Thomas, thank you for joining us. I request you to be a little patient because I'm going to go through a lot of these details for our viewers to really stitch the story together of how the bombs actually managed to get onto the flight. Let me come straight. This is of course the analysis and conclusion section. Let me come straight to the fact that point number 4.6 says evidence indicates that after the event had occurred, which is basically when the ATC lost all contact with the aircraft once a loud sound was heard. Once that event had occurred, the evidence indicates, though the pilots did not or were not in a position to communicate with the ground, they nevertheless appear to have taken some action. It is evident that an event had occurred at 31,000 feet which had brought down Kanishka. What could have possibly happened to it? The aircraft was apparently incapacitated, and this was either due to having been hit from outside, so that was possibility number one, that some sort of a foreign object hit the aircraft, due to some structural failure, or due to the detonation of an explosive device within the aircraft. These were the three possibilities that were put out. Over the course of the analysis section, in point 4.8, the report says none of the participants have produced any evidence which could lead to the conclusion that there was any external hit to the aircraft. In fact, in the report dated 13th November 1985, Mr. Paul Turner has stated as follows that the US NORAD and Space Command confirmed that there was no incoming space debris in the vicinity of Ireland on the 23rd of June 1985. Logically speaking, if something had crashed into the aircraft, then there would be some sort of debris of that foreign object which would have also been found in the same vicinity of the bomb site. But none of that was there, so they ruled out the possibility of something hitting the aircraft from the outside. That leaves us with two possibilities, that there was structural failure, technical failure, or there was the detonation of an explosive device. The report has further said that there is circumstantial and direct evidence which leads to a conclusion that The cause of the accident was in fact the explosion of a bomb in the forward cargo hold of the aircraft. At the same time, there is complete lack of evidence to indicate structural failure, because this report has put out in detail some of the technical glitches or snags that were faced by the aircraft prior to, of course, this incident, and how that was taken care of, and most of it was just routine. Now we come to some very interesting aspects. Let's quickly put out for our viewers this page number. I'm on page number 164, viewers, which will give us a full timeline of how Khalistani terrorists back in 1985 managed to plant not just one bomb but two bombs in two separate flights, both targeting Air India. And just I request you to keep up with me, because I'll also give a summary in just a minute. There are two flights, okay, and all of this starts in Vancouver. There is CPA 003, which is from Vancouver to Tokyo, so that's route number 1, and there is CPA 060, which is from Vancouver to Toronto. Both of them are connecting. One is connecting to Air India 301, which goes from Tokyo to Bangkok, and the other one is connecting to Air India 182, which is the flight which met with tragedy. So one is westbound and one is eastbound. On 20th of June 1985, just 3 days prior to the bombing, a male calls CPA reservations in Vancouver. He discusses a number of things and he books a one-way ticket on CPA 060 to Toronto with a connecting flight Air India 182 under the name of Jaswant Singh. Okay, so one flight is booked for Jaswant Singh connecting Toronto to then Air India flight 182 from Vancouver to Toronto and then ahead. Return ticket is also booked for another man, Mohinder Bel Singh, on CPA 003 to Tokyo connecting with Air India 301 to Bangkok. So two tickets are booked by the same man in Vancouver on CP Airlines, one from Vancouver to Toronto further connecting to Air India 182, and the other one from Toronto to Tokyo connecting further with Air India 301 to Bangkok. Both of them are on this day, 20th June, booked under the names of Jaswant Singh and Mohinder Bel Singh. At 7:12 p.m. on the same day, a male attended the CP air ticket office in Vancouver. So a man comes to the CP air ticket office in person, physically. He pays 3,005 Canadian dollars. Imagine at that time, in 1985, this amount of money is being spent to quickly book these flights in cash for these above tickets. And during this physical visit, he gets the names on the tickets changed from Mohinder Bel Singh to L Singh, and also from a return ticket to a one-way ticket. That's the change that is made, and he changes Jaswant Singh's ticket to M Singh. So the names are entirely removed. Then there's no longer a Mohinder Bel Singh and a Jaswant Singh, it's a L Singh and an M Singh. On 22nd of June at 1:30, a Mr. Singh calls reservations and gets confirmation that his one-way ticket to Toronto with the luggage to be sent through to India. At 3:50 p.m, Mr. Singh checks in at Vancouver airport. He gets a seat 10B confirmed to Toronto, but he insists that his baggage be interlined to AI 182. At 4:18, CPA 060 then departs from Vancouver 18 minutes late. What's interesting right here, as you can see, M Singh is not in the assigned seat. So M Singh, the man, he comes, checks in, puts in his baggage from Vancouver, towards Toronto, manages to convince the airline that you must ensure that at least my baggage then goes from Toronto to the other destinations. Meanwhile, he is not there in the plane physically when it takes off from Vancouver. On the other hand, L Singh checks in for CPA 003 and one suitcase to be interlined, which is basically interlinking, to Air India 301. He is assigned the seat 38H. CPA 060 arrives in Toronto. Some passengers and baggage are interlined to Air India 182. CPA 003 departs 17 minutes late for Tokyo. L. Singh is also not in the seat. Both people check in at Vancouver airport a couple of hours apart from each other. They check in for two different flights. They manage to put in their luggage. One says that you must interlink it to Air India 182. The other one says that you must interlink it to Air India 301. And neither of them is actually in their seats at that time. And then, of course, as we know, this is what happens. At 16:09 a.m. on the 23rd of June, the baggage cart explodes in transit area. It kills 2 people and injures 4 people. This happens at Tokyo's Narita airport. What happened here was that the bag, the suitcase with the explosives, went off while it was being transported from the aircraft that landed in Tokyo and was bound for Bangkok. This was Air India flight 301. So it wasn't just a single bombing, it was 2 bombings that were planned. The bomb did go off, it injured 4 people and killed 2 people in Narita. Had this bomb also made it on flight AI 301, more people would have died, which is what happened at 7:14 a.m. when Air India 182 disappeared from the radar, which of course indicates in great detail how the explosion took place. Captain Sam Thomas, thank you for bearing with us, sir. What really goes through your mind, sir, when you hear how all of this was orchestrated? I mean, the fact that despite Air India sharing on the 1st of June communication and intelligence with its global offices, communication that reaches then Canadian police, none of that is taken seriously. And there are people who are making suspicious phone calls, they're getting names changed, they're paying a huge sum of money. They're insisting that, okay, even if we are not sitting in the flight, please make sure that our baggage gets checked in. And all of that happens.
Ma'am, good evening. And firstly, I'd like to point out that my expertise is in civil aviation and not so much in terrorism. However, I'd like to first start off by saying that this is a 37-year-old case. I was just getting into 10th standard when this happened, but we had, it was a very famous case and everybody at that time knew about it. It might be startling now to think that somebody paid X amount of money and did not check in. But let me take you back to 1985. These procedures like KYC and Aadhaar and, all those kind of measures were not in place. You could pay at any time. You could walk into a city-side counter of an international airline, pay money, pay in cash, and get onto the airplane. The baggage reconciliation and the passenger reconciliation are all factors that came in post the Kanishka tragedy. In fact, it did not even start with the Kanishka tragedy. The Lockerbie incident was pretty similar, and there was a similar incident involving LTT, again, just like how the bomb went off in Narita, this happened in Chennai. So it might appear shocking to everybody now that these factors that appear to be very common these days happened during that time. Let me remind you that those were not the procedures, and it was very common for people to book last minute tickets and put in baggage, book book tickets in the name of other people and travel. So there were travel agencies were involved in this, and you could have booklets. Before we had Air India booklets and Indian Airlines booklets, which could be purchased, and that would be purchased by corporates in the name of anybody, and anybody could travel with that. So we have to keep that in mind. But what you must appreciate is that the DGCA and the accident investigation that took place at that time was, if I remember correctly, it was Captain KPS Nair and Captain Verma who were involved in this, along with others. I just recollect these two names. They did such a fantastic job to get to the bottom of this case in a record time. And that was commendable, given the infrastructure they had and given the resources or the lack of it that was handed to them.
Absolutely. Captain Thomas, fair point, right? You're right. Back then, there were not enough security measures. We understand that, I mean, up until recently, until we faced terrorism and tragedies on our own, someone could actually walk in with guns and a bomb into a hotel as well. You're absolutely right. We've learned from those experiences. What is bizarre though is the fact that this was not a coincidence, right? This was Canadian intelligence putting a warrant on a man, Talvinder Parmar, in 1984, doing daily surveillance of the same man starting 1st June 1985, so 23 days prior to the bombing. On the 1st of June, Air India shares communication saying that there is a possibility, a very real possibility, that there could be an attempt of a bomb blast on one of our airlines, on one of our aircrafts, pardon me. They share this communication. It reaches Canadian police, which says that, okay, we don't think that this is really something to be looked into, while their intelligence officers are actually tailing the man, the key conspirator. On the 4th of June, and this is all in the Canadian intelligence report that has come out, by the way. These are not facts that I'm just citing from some newspaper reports. This is all there, online, very much available for the public to read. On the 4th of June, sir, 2 Canadian intelligence officers follow Talvinder Parmar and a man, Mr. Rayat, the terrorist, the second terrorist, into the woods in an area called Duncan in British Columbia. They hear a very loud explosion there. One officer says, oh, I think this is a gunshot. I recognize this to be a gunshot. The other one says, is probably feeling like that was a much louder noise than a gunshot. But they still write it off as a gunshot. Suspiciously enough, the pending surveillance of these men is then called off the next day. And a few days later, you have people who, like I said, are insisting that, okay, you put us on this flight, then you check in our baggage. Then there is a part of the report, Justice BN Kirpal Report, that actually talks about how a lot of the X-ray machine stops working in the progress of the flight part, and I'll show that bit also, where it says that approximately at 9:30 p.m. they mean, Air Canada personnel opened the passenger check-in counter to flight AI 182, which terminates at Montreal, and the flight from Montreal to London, Delhi, Bombay is designated AI 182. The checked-in baggage is sent to the baggage makeup area. Between 11 to 11:50 p.m. a suspect suitcase is identified as the X-ray showed what appeared to be some wires next to the suitcase opening, and the suitcase is placed on the floor next to the X-ray machine. Subsequently, 2 more suspect suitcases are located, and these are also placed on the machine, and somehow they find that the machine actually just stops working after a while. So in a hurry, they end up pushing in this baggage. What is it, Captain Thomas, that Canada then, sir, perhaps now needs to learn from its own past and its own mistakes that it has made? Because like you said, yes, in hindsight, it's always 2020, right? When we look at these reports now, we feel, how is it that there was so much of intelligence, so much of information that was continuously pushed your way? India begged and pleaded, please extradite this man, please watch his activities, he is a criminal, he is a Khalistani, send him back. Justin Trudeau's father says, no, we don't want to send him back, gives him safe haven. And a year
later this sort of a tragedy strikes. What is it, sir, that Canada today needs to introspect into so that we don't allow more Khalistani terrorists to mushroom?
Ma'am, I completely agree with your sentiments and your reading of the entire situation. As far as Justin Trudeau is concerned, frankly, he is a joke in the international sphere. However, having said that, now we need to look at each of those incidents that happened and the intelligence failures that now appear to have led to these incidents. Be it the 9/11, be it the hijack of IC-814, there were credible inputs. The Bombay terrorist attacks, there were very credible inputs. What we have to understand is India as a geopolitical power was not as powerful as it is today back in 1985. I can very well understand the intelligence officers, they get reams and reams of papers of information at a time. It's not just this. Post the incident, when you look at it, yes, they had these sort of information. And a Canadian intelligence officer looking at this intelligence piece would say, you know what, probably, somebody, he doesn't even understand what Khalistan is. He doesn't understand what, because they are not used to any kind of terrorist activity within their country. Had it been an American intelligence, that is intelligence pertaining to some problem that's going to happen in the US, they would have jumped on it and they would have done everything to prevent it. But we today, I mean, India does hold a very powerful position today in the world, and they will very quickly understand. Everybody, you in the media and everybody else knows what action was taken very swiftly against a very leading member of the Khalistan movement, and that happened in Toronto very recently. So we are also now seem to be going on a hot pursuit kind of action, and it's a no-nonsense kind of government that is at the helm of affairs right now, and they will make sure that the extremist elements pay very rapidly.
Absolutely. Captain Thomas, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast and bringing in your perspective. Like I said, we've been doing this for many days now. For the past many days, we've been putting out information from the Canadian intelligence report that was led by Justice John Major of Canada. And today we finally managed to access the Justice BN Kirpal report, which was not made public earlier, and we've managed to get a copy of all of it. As I've said, in hindsight, yes, everything is 2020. But when you look at the sort of evidence, the sort of intelligence that was pushed Canada's way in 1984, and the way Canadian intelligence and the Canadian government dealt with this information, the way there are loopholes and lapses in the entire investigation, it really doesn't seem like incompetence. It doesn't seem like, okay, they were just mere coincidence after coincidence. It seems as though there were people within the Canadian establishment who were ensuring that these men, that these Khalistani terrorists were getting the safe haven and the refuge that they needed to come up with this entire conspiracy that left over 300 people dead across the world. That's something that we definitely need to look back once again and understand from. What is it that went wrong back then, and what is it that we need to do today to ensure that history does not repeat at least its ugly bits ever again.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.